Today's episode we're going to cover BRISCON, or as we like to call it here, the Australian Team Yankee Nationals for 2024. So in this episode I'm going to cover all the lists that are going to currently be at this tournament. Now, I can understand if some of you are going, well, hang on, doesn't that give you an advantage if you're playing? It's like, yes and no. I'm doing this as a perspective to give you guys a broader outline. There's some really good top-notch players in this group. We all play regularly quite together. And lists are going to be available anyway to everyone on Friday, prior to the event. So, not necessarily, because the lists, when I got given these to do this, I got given these after the TA had already collected the lists. And then the lists will be made public. So this video is probably coming out only a couple of days after the list came public. So first off, we need to understand what the constraints are for the Australian Nationals. And for Australian Nationals this year, the restrictions were no more than 20 tanks of front armour 9 or more, no more than 30 infantry teams in total, no allies, and no duplicate formations. So that does give you a little bit of play for certain lists. Now, some people would think that this does really constrict on Soviet and Warpack players, but at the same time, I think it allows them to branch out and do things that they won't normally touch on, be it more elite forces like T64 BV formations, T80 formations, T80 shock formations, VDV Afghan. So it opens up what you can actually do rather than just go, okay, I'm going to take my 3 formations of T55s with BTR formation fully maxed out at 120 points. Easily done. I'm going to have close to about 100 AFVs on the field. Now, this tournament was put into mind for newer players to allow them to go, hey, look, this is a very friendly, open tournament. It is nationals, but we encourage people to come and play because that's what we want. We want to grow the community. We don't want to segregate the community and push it towards, elitism within certain forces. Hopefully my article has been put up on the Team Yankee website in regards to facing tough opponents and lists and the psychological impact. If it hasn't, I will put a copy on Discord for those out there for you. And that delves deeper into the psychological realm, but we'll not talk about that here because this is all about the lists, and that's what we want to see is the lists, because everyone's like, what are people taking? The other thing is to remember that Warpack players do have the T72B, so it actually gives them an opportunity to use T72B. It also gives them an opportunity to use other vehicles and other things they wouldn't want to try. So that's great there, because I think if you look at a Polish force and a German force, they can be expensive once they add up. So I'm just going to start looking at the lists, and I think the first list we got is a Swedish force. I really like this Swedish force, I really do. Out of all the lists I've actually looked at, this is probably my number one pick to actually take out Australian Nationals. And you're probably sitting there going, well, what about all the other forces, And it's like, well, to be honest, this Swedish force has everything in mind. It really has everything. It's got its bases covered. And the player who's taken this Swedish force is a very good player. So, and this is the thing I think Gary wrote in his article, for new players. It's not the list, it's the player. So just remember that. A really balanced list in a good player's hand can be quite powerful, especially at tournaments. So without further ado, let's look at the force. It has a Centurion tank company along with an armoured rifle company and then plenty of support. So he's pretty much got a lot of RBS 56 in this. I really like that. Like, pretty much everything has either been upgraded to get the RBS 56. He's also taken the RBS 56s both in his infantry and as a support option. So that's quite punchy, considering that's like a Milan +1. So it's an AT22 rather than AT21. It's a little bit balanced. So it actually does provide a bit more punch, especially against things like M1A1s and Leopard 2 A4s, and as well as T64 BV and T64, as well as Chieftain as well. So it gives you that edge where it's like AT21, it's like, yeah, I could still hit it. I'm either looking for a 2 or a 3 for it to actually pen, In this case, it's like, I've added +1 to that, so it's like, now it's like, it's now looking towards the 4, 5, and 6 range to actually go through, which is quite nasty. And then on top of that, you've got the vegan and the helicopter platoons, which are pretty much similar to the Lynx tow systems, which is nice. Nice and cheap, fully maxed out with plenty of air. I think I've looked at most of the lists, and it's like, AA against this list, it's like, it's fully maxed. It's like, you really need to be on top of your toes. Knowing this player, they're going to be quite crafty with the way they bring in aircraft. So, I can see this playing to their strengths quite well. And then on top of that, they've actually got their own dual AA system as well for countering it as well. And don't forget, like, the infantry themselves have got some pretty decent kit there as well. And I love the Centurion with its ERA. Yes, its front armor is very much less than a Patton, but the Patton still got, 1 AT to it. But that's 16 against all heat, and it's like, plenty of things have heat in this game. It's like pretty punchy, good skill, can hide, can do everything we want. It's better than a Leopard 1, and it's nearly as cheap as a Leopard 1, so you're better off taking the Centurion every day. It's like, if it had RF2, I'd be really impressed with it. So that's my take on this Swedish force. Next list. Next list is a Soviet force. VDV Afghan. So, knowing the restraints of this tournament, a lot of people seem to have picked Afghan, just for the pure fact they are a pretty good force. So this one's got the BMD Air Assault Battalion with 2 platoons known as 5 ASUs plus the AA as well. And then on top of that, he's taken 10 T55s and 6 T64 BVs. So that all both with missiles upgrades. And then you've also got some Hinds, some Storms, and BMP3s in there. So it's a well-rounded list, plenty of punch, plenty of options for them to go, okay, I can either have this in reserve, that in reserve. It's really great for that. And on top of that, it's got some really hard-to-hit infantry. And especially when you know that you're going up against a lot of NATO forces in this, or Nordic style, it gives you a lot more balance, because it means I've got the skill, and I'm also to hit on forwards just like you. So it does even out the playing fields. So it's quite crafty in that way. I do like this list. It comes into mind that it's can do what you want. Like, you can have the 10 T55s sitting straight on the board up front, in reserve either the Hinds or the 64 BVs. Vice versa, it just depends on what you really want to do, but it has very many options, and I really like that. And on top, you've also got the Storms, which are quite nasty as well. So it's actually got some good ambushing units in there with the ASU 85s. I really do like that. Next list. So, Danish force. So, another Nordic force. This Danish force is quite interesting. It's well-rounded. Plenty of Centurions. The only thing really marking the Danes down is their skill. But that makes up for it when you look at like 3 Leopard 2s, from their West German allies, including some Gepards and Red Eye teams as well. So it does make it up there. Plenty of artillery though, also to piff infantry, which is quite scary, and on top. So well-rounded, plenty of infantry teams as well, because they're cheap, why not? And fits into that category of under 30 teams as well. The same with the tanks as well, just under 20 teams of front armor 9 plus. So it gives you good options there as well. Like, you've got, plenty of Centurions. You've got like close to, 3? So 13 Centurions, including like the tank hunting platoon Centurions as well. So it's like, because they're so cheap, they're only 8 points. Next to the Danish Leopards, which I think are at 9. Does pay off. They're not as equipped their Swedish cousins with the ERA, but for what they are, they can pretty much go hard, which is great to see. I really do rate this list. This is my number 3rd list, I think, out of all the lists to go forward as a good contender this year. Next one, British. So this is a good example of why restrictions are in place. Warriors. So this is just a good indication of a player going, hey, this gives me an opportunity to actually play a warrior, themed force. So that's great. Take some warriors, take them Milan, section, and everything with them, as long as with some Challenger row arms, great. Has everything in there, as well as Harriers. So good options for reserves as well. Plus a couple of MLRSs as well to deal with infantry. Same with the 8 mortar platoon and an FO. So those mortars are going to be ranging in on 2-3 plus every turn. So they're just going to be, whatever they're hitting, they're going to be making sure that there's re-roll the saves and re-roll the hits. So yeah, they're pretty nasty. Especially once they start getting those repeats. And this is a good example of why, restrictions can actually play to people's favoritism. Like, normally this player I know likes to play a lot of infantry, especially with either 5-4-3-2 or airborne. However, this has given them a great opportunity to actually have a themed list and play it and actually still be competitive. So, another good list of example of why the restrictions are in place, especially for less experienced tournament players. This can be great for that. Not that this person is not less experienced, it's just that this is the reason why we put these restrictions in place for the Australian nationals. Next up, another Swedish force. This one's very much similar to the other one. The only difference is it's gone for a bit more of a Finnish allies to bump up those reserve options, and plenty of Centurions, and then packed out some more infantry a bit more, again with the RBSs as well. Good list. I really like it. I love the Swedish artillery. It's like nothing can compare to it. Like, it's quite expensive, but when you look at it, what it does, it's pretty scary. Having that auto loader on it. So, but yeah, I think the Swedish lists are going to be doing quite well this year. They're very decent for what they are, and I really do like the Swedes. Maybe next year I might look at actually doing my own Swedish list. We'll see how we go. Okay, Iranians. So this is a good example of using that 10-10 or 20 tanks. Maxed out Chieftain Company, maxed out M60. Plenty of support options. Big unit of froggies. Something to really, strike fear when you're trying to face 20 tanks. You've also got frogfoots to get rid of. Plenty of artillery, big units of artillery, and jeeps and scorps, as well as AA to take care of things like geckos and shikas. So this Iranian list is actually quite scary when you're thinking about it. But at the same time, it's like they do have to reserve some things, so it's like that may be its downfall there. But on top of that, there's plenty of stuff there. It's hard hitting it and still finds constraints. So that's a great list. And another example of what you can, you can't do. Alright, another British force. This one's a pure chieftain force. And this is what I really like, is this tournament allows this kind of thing. Where you can start fielding chieftains again. You can start fielding tank formations, and not having to worry about facing a horde. So this one's got your obligation of chieftains. None of them have been upgraded for Stillbrew, which is fine. Plenty of infantry for support, because you got the air mobile and the mech platoons. Plenty of other support, and then he's thrown in challenges as well. So that's great to bump up that whole, reserve side of the house, so those chieftains can stay on the board, start pumping away those AT-22 shots, using their skill to blitz and shoot and scoot, to stay in and out of cover. Exactly what the British doctrine wants them to do. So, great example of a list used. I think this list will do quite nicely as well. Israelis. So, I was thinking that there might be some Israeli Centurions or shots, but the McCabe is still quite nice. It's quite punchy. There's plenty of them in there. Plenty of infantry as well, also upgraded to the Dragon 2 since the PDF came out. Plenty in there for reserve as well, so As you can see, he only needs to reserve maybe 2 or 3 units for this and still be quite punchy on the field. The only interesting thing is there's no artillery. I don't know if that's a mistake or not, but depending on the playstyle, I think it will do quite well depending on terrain as well, because you can hug terrain and use those tank skill and rate of fire to actually like move them where they are, and because they got decent front armor, they can get there pretty hard. So it means that the tanks can secure the objectives, stay in cover, and push and assault if needed, and then the infantry can get forward. Another Soviet list. So this one's a T80 list, and this is a good example of, again, using that whole I want to play something different, especially with Soviets. So you got a large BMP company, which is great, or actually, sorry, mid-strength BMP company, again, conforming to those rules, and then you've got all your T80s. So you've got 7 T80s, and then you've also got 5 T64 BVs as well. So plenty of armour in there, plenty of punchy armour, and again, you only need to reserve 1 or 2 units to make up your 48 points for 120 points. So I really love this force, the fact that they've gone, yeah, I want to play tanks. And that's great because it leaves chance for other things such as painting. So I really like that fact that you can actually concentrate on that. That's one of the things I think I really like about the restrictions in this, is you can concentrate on things like painting. Up next is a French list. I think the French, with their boost from NATO, did get quite a hefty helping. This one's quite an interesting list in the fact that it's got 2 formations, one being the VABs and the other one being the VPLs. I think they work quite well together, considering it's got a 1-drop reserve in the Leclerc. I think that's great, straight up. It's like 3 Leclercs, 55 points, 1-drop reserve, done. And then it's got a couple of hot Mephistos. So, again, Mephistos are preferred over the hot Gazelles. You get 2 of them for the same price and double your damage. So, and you still get Hammerhead rule for them as well. So, that, they're still hard to hit, and they'll constantly be hard to hit. Compared to the Helos, it's like once they lose that hunter killer, they're gone. So, I do like this lift. It's quite scary, but at the same time, it's, if you can hit the Milans pretty hard and get rid of the VBLs and the Hots, I think you'd be pretty good to go, especially against Leclerc if you can get around to the side of it as well. But I do like this list. Another Soviet force, VDV again. This one's maxed out everything pretty much within the VDV force, and then pretty much got 10 T62s and 10 T55s. And then another lot of 2 sets of Nonas. I really like this list. Plenty of Nonas everywhere. So, bulk support units, especially considering the skill of the Nona. Using that OP as well. So, it's like ranging in on 3s and open, 4+ regularly. It's great. Especially with that OP. And dual Nonas are pretty scary. On top of that, it's got plenty of hitting force for it as well. And the fact that you've got that skill with the Afghans, it's hard to hit them. And they're quite maneuverable and they've got good skill. So I think this is where, this is my number 2 pick for a list, I think, was the Soviets. So it does quite well, and I really like it. We do have one American force, and this one's a pure M60 pattern force. I do like it. It's like something you wouldn't really see regularly, but I think this is the great thing about this tournament, is it brings out these kinds of lists. It's like people go, hey, I can dust these off, I can play with them. It gives me an opportunity to use things I don't regularly have. So, I think that's a really good note to see on this. I like this list. Plenty of, hard-hitting units in regards to, the patterns. Again, it's reserves, only 3 units probably in reserve. Still has quite a few units to hold objectives, keep things at bay. Decent amount of AA plus artillery. So, it's a decent list, and it'll do quite well, I think. Next up is a British list. This one's a FV432 formation. 3 units of small infantry with, Milan 2s. Same again with the Milans, with the Milan unit there with Milan 2s. Big unit of mortars, because I think, for 4 points you can't go wrong with those mortars. I think every Brit player I know pretty much rocks the 8 unit of mortars for 4 points, because it's best bang for your buck. Harriers plus the rapiers and marksmen, pretty good units there. And then on top, a massive Fox company, pretty much maxed out apart from infantry. So I rate this list quite well. So it is in my top 5 there as well. And then yeah, I really do like it. It's quite an interesting list. Now, last but not least, my list, the Canadians. So I really like the Canadian list I've come up with. I really wanted to add a bucket load of Lavs and Cougars because I really wanted to see how they perform. That's the reason why I really took this list. Otherwise, I probably would have gone for maybe more Leopard 2s, more ADATs, bit more blowpipes, and more TAU Totus, and maybe some Leopard 1s in support, given plenty of options there. So that's what I would have done, and probably used like a couple of Coyotes Squadron. But I really do want to try out the Cougars. They really look nice. I know that they've got a really bad cross-check, but we'll see how they go. I think against some units they'll do quite well, but we'll see how they go. So that rounds out all the lists, and then we've got the Stig list, which is a T72B list. This is just in case we actually have players drop out during the day. I think it's a good option just to say, yep, no worries. If they drop out, so be it. But it also gives people an opportunity to face off against the T72s. So it's an each G list with T72Ms. You've got quite a few T62Ms. I think you've got close to 19 of the T72s in there. So definitely quite a few of them. And then you've got the Spandrels and Hinds and a large BMP 2 company as well. So plenty of infantry and plenty of BMP 2s, along with some arty as well. So that should do quite well, I think, for a Stig list, as I like to call it. So that's all the lists that are going to be at BrisCon Australian Nationals this year. So again, I hope that gives you some insight of what list building is in Australia, especially for large events such as this. I will be trying to get as many rounds as possible recorded to put up on the channel as well throughout the weekend. So at least that way after the weekend you should have maybe close to 5, not necessarily battle reports, but 5 rounds filmed that you can view and go, okay, that's the style of how we play in Australia. Again, if you like this channel and you like to keep supporting it, please like and subscribe. And until next time, good hunting.